Hello, it's Diane Matyas in my studio. Things are crazy here. I would like to invite you to watch how I roll up 2 layers on my jelly plate. And you say, what's a jelly plate? It's not a sandwich. It's a rubber, it feels rubbery, but it's actually a mineral, squishy, witchy kind of surface. And you call it a plate because we're going to make prints from it. Okay, so it's this lovely stuff. We're going to lay it down here. We're going to use some really basic paint. I put it in these little squeeze bottles to make it a little easier for us all. And today's actually a mixture of both acrylic and tempera paint. So, but it could be one or the other. We're only going to do 2 colors. We're going to use the tool, the brayer, which looks like this. It's a rubber rotating wheel, and it's going to spread it, and then we're going to print it with our hands onto paper. So watch how I do this, and you'll start to get ideas. Also, right before I start, just to give you a sense that working a lot in this sketchbook of ours, I think some of you have this, and you know, there's beautiful white pages. It's not that big, but I've started to make jelly prints in here and drawings and things, and it gives you a sense of what I've been experimenting with. And this is an experimental process. You know, in order to make drawings with it, there's a trick to that. I can come back and add and collage with it. So again, here's drawing with the jelly plate. Here's abstract art with a jelly plate. And I'll show you more of this as we go, but I'm going to open it up to a blank page. So I have 2 pages of, you know, 1 page is just blank that I'm going to use right now. Okay, so I'm going to lay that down as I switch my camera, and let's see, here's our workshop area. As I said, here's my notebook. I have it right handy because this is where I'm going to be rolling, but then I'm going to roll off onto here. I'm going to use this to clean the brayer in between. So it becomes an artwork here that's abstract, and it becomes a work here that's more intentional. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my yellow. I'm going to squirt a little on, and there's no, you know, you're going to get better at this. You're going to say what's too much, what's too little, and as you go along. And what happens with this brayer is that it starts to roll it out. You can go different directions. Let's see. I'm going to add a little bit more. That's not really loud. It's very dry in my house because it's the heat is on because it's very cold outside. If you get little pieces in here, you can just remove them. You'll notice that it wasn't a perfectly clean plate. There was things on there, actually. And as I spread it out, it gets nice and flat. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to roll it clean. And I'm going to sort of put it upside down. I do it like that so it doesn't get dirty. But for fast uses, you could leave it either way, actually. And I'm going to take the paper I'm going to use is from my deli paper. It's used to wrap sandwiches usually, so it's not art paper, but it certainly does a great job, especially when you're experimenting. And what's great is that it's translucent and I can see through it. So when I lay it on my wet plate with the wet yellow ink, I can see it coming through, and I can tell that it's sticking onto the paper. And if I wait too long, it will get glued on there. I don't want it to get glued on. I want it to pull off and give me this nice yellow background. Okay, so that was my first. If I get closer, you can see it's not, there is some pattern and some texture on there. I'm going to try it again. Because practice makes perfect. And as I squeeze this, come on, baby. Sometimes it gets clogged up. So we're going to solve those problems as we go along. Let's see. Let's see if I can get this to unclog, because I think it's that earlier paint was cloggy and it was giving me craziness. That's why I added the acrylic paint, which is way smoother. So let's see if I can unclog it now for this demonstration. This is going to drive me crazy. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to open it up a little bit because I didn't expect that to happen. All right? It was going along fine. All right. Again, I'm going to make a second. Oh, this is so much better to have enough. You can see that if you have too much, it'll spread all over your whole tray. So you don't want to have too much, but you want to have enough. And as you get it to the edges of your plate, you don't roll onto your tray. You want to keep control of this onto there. And then again, wiping it off on here so you don't get paint all over yourself. All right, so what do? We take our paper, and what I call this is, when I lay my paper down, I call it eyeballing. Because I can see through it, I can more or less get it pretty straight on there and then let it fall evenly on there. And that's fine. I don't want to lay it so that a piece is not cut, like so I miss anything. I want to cover that plate. I massage it, very gentle massaging. We do not want to hurt the plate. We don't want to cut it with anything sharp, especially like if I poked it with something, like the tip of something. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want any metal to hit it. I want it to be really cared for because it's delicate. And I want the surface to maintain its flatness and not get cut. All right, there's another yellow. All right. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let it dry a little bit. And then I think I'm going to try a different color. If I want to clean this off, if I don't want any yellow on there, I can take this is the Scoopy hand sanitizer, or maybe even a wipe. And I could clean that off if I wanted to. Or I could keep going and just layer it up there. So I'm going to leave some on and wipe some off. So I'm leaving some yellow around the edges. See if it makes any difference. I don't know. It really depends on how warm it is in your classroom or your studio. There we go. All right. Now you say, what are you doing? I switched colors, right? So this is a blue, and it's kind of an intense ultramarine blue. Every color has variations. There's not just one blue. There's, a lighter blue that has more white in it. There's a royal blue. There's a blue. This has a lot more purpley kind of tones, a cooler tones come out in it as well when you add. Oh, look at that. I got some on my fingers. So I'm wiping it off on this piece. And then I'm also going to clean my brayer. And I can clean it any way I want to. It doesn't matter if I go zigzag or left or right. It's really up to you. But when it stops rolling out, you can stop rolling it. And then come to this part. Let's try it with just the blue on a piece of paper, right? Doesn't matter which side I do. It doesn't seem to make a difference. Layering it down. I like to hold the paper diagonally, like this corner, and this corner. And then I pat it very gently, massaging. It gives you a very pleasing feeling when you do these. And again, we're just putting some backgrounds on. So we have our yellow background. It's already almost dry. And now I'll pull the blue background. If you think you need to rub it some more, put it back. If you want to peek at it, you can peek at it. If you think you want to rub it, just lay it back down again. Okay. Sometimes, like in this case, it was sort of dry there, so it didn't pick up. But I like the texture, right? You can get a lot of texture of these things. I'm going to try it another time, and I'm going to work a little faster. Then put my ink on there, get my roller going, get my brayer braying. And instead of waiting around, I'm going to get it nice and thick on here. Shiny, shiny. You want it shiny all over. Have fun with the brayer over there. Let it dry. And then, let's see what I can do with drawing. I'm going to draw on this with a very soft thing, which is this eraser. I don't want to use the pointy part of my pencil. I want to draw with the soft, soft eraser side. And since this is an experiment, I'm just going to have fun with the line as it slides around. You know, you can try different ways. You can do dots if you want to, but I like my line that's traveling along there. And now let's try to see what that looks like. Okay, I guess I'm going to try. You know what? This is dry, or my first yellow is dry, so I'm going to lay down the yellow background on top of this new piece. And I'm going to line it up with my eyeballs, try to cover it up. Looks like a big piece of bread or something. It's a funny shape. It's rectangular, but with the yellow and the blue, and I can see that pattern that I drew on there. So what do you think is going to happen? What's going to show up where I drew? Is it going to be blue? Is it going to be white? Is it going to be yellow? Is it going to be something new? Let's take a look. Oh my goodness. All right. You can see that it peeled off pretty nicely, and the blue went over. It didn't really make a green, but it made a darker blue, I feel, than it was before. And I have the yellow showing through. So that's a two-color print ready to go. I'm going to let it dry. Shall we try that again? If you want to get rid of what's on there because you're going to say, it might offset, again, you can rub it clean with your cleaner gently. Just loosen it up. The fact is that if you put more ink, if you put more paint on it, it'll just keep going. You know, it will still offset whatever color you put on last. Occasionally, the old stuff will come off too, but that's a trickier method of doing it. And that's when you get really good at this, you'll start playing around with that aspect of it. So I'm going to go back to yellow because I want to see what happens if I put a yellow on this blue. Okay. Whoa, there's my yellow. Yikes. Coming out the side. I forgot about that. Okay. And I'll get a little bit more. It's too bad this is clogged. I'm going to be more careful with it. I'm not going to use the temper paint. I'm going to use the smoother paint. That's what I'm going to do. Because that got blobby. All right, it's pretty wet. And again, I have this beautiful yellow, and I love when I can make green with it over here. It's so fun. This starts to be so beautiful. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to draw through. It makes me think of ramen noodles, this kind of drawing. And again, it's an experiment to see what happens when you remove the color you're doing and you start to work on another color underneath. So let's see what happens. Let's see again. Getting it lined up is the trick. And if you're a little off, it's okay. It's, again, this is experimenting and playing games with it. This is so different than a lot of printmaking that has a lot of control. This is not a controlled printmaking. This is a mono printing. You get one of each print. You can't really get the same thing again because each one is different. All right, it's pulling up pretty well. It didn't rip. Now, sometimes I'm worried it might tear, so I was very pleased. I'm going to use this other piece to pull up more yellow just because I can. Instead of washing it off, I'm going to print it off. Massaging. Cool. Wow, that's kind of neat. You can see the design through to the other side. But when I come back to this one, let's compare this, the blue was on the bottom and the yellow's on the top. And this is the yellow's on the bottom and the blue's on the top. And I'm trying to decide which one I like better. I think I like how the blue came out here. That beautiful bright blue is bluer than this sort of darker blacker, sort of mixed with the yellow. And instead of making green, it made a darker, so fascinating. All right, so let's look at this more carefully. Before I do that, I'm going to, again, clean my plate. Pretty well. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to get it pretty well. I have a feeling if I use a Clorox wipe, it really will get clean. But right now I don't have one, so I'm just using what I have, which is a Kleenex and some hand sanitizer. So what's really nice about this is you get very sanitized hands, which these days is a plus, right? So I'm going to move this away, let it sit over here, and we're just going to review other things. When I lay this down on the white paper, you can see because it's translucent on the darkness, it's kind of not as bright, but when I put it on the paper, it has a brightness to it. So when I go to my notebook, I'm going to find a page. Let's see if I can have the roll-off page, which is now completely dry, and I could do this page here, or I could cut out a shape. Let's see if I cut out the whole piece, I would just go around it and glue it on there with my glue stick, which is nice. So I could do it like this. Still a little bit wet, so I'm being very careful so I don't get it stuck on my hand. Remember to give you all scissors. Now I could glue this on there. It's kind of beautiful. I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to let it dry a little bit more before I glue it. Maybe I'll cut this baby out. And instead of cutting it all, I'm going to cut it out and see what it looks like. It's really dry, which is a lot easier to deal with than a wet one. That looks nice too. I could even cut a shape and collage. Now, we have been doing collages, so I'm going to do that leaf shape that we had worked on in the past and just see what it looks like. Wow, I love how that looks together. So that's a very different thing. You could work another rectangle. You could do that. You could do maybe both, or maybe later on another color could go live there. As you can see here, I had many dry pieces and I just had fun collaging. So while we learn to do gelli printing, we're going to be letting them dry, gluing them in, cutting them, collaging them. And you can see again, there's so many variations that you can start playing around and seeing what looks good as we switch colors. Maybe that would look better. No. That's kind of interesting. So that's how we're going to do it. Let me switch back. So, wow, that's a lot of learning. And I know it's a little much, but we're going to try to do it together. If you're at your desk at school, or if you're at your desk at home, or if you just want a reminder of how to do this, this is what we're doing, gelli printing. All right, enjoy.